Oh, hell no. Not today. Diane looked up and her face twisted like she'd stepped in something rotten. Who let this in? Security doesn't work here anymore? I have a 10 a.m. with Carol. You have nothing. Diane stood up. Look at you. You look like you crawled out of a shelter and followed someone through the door. The contract, girl, stop. Diane laughed. Sharp, cruel. She pointed at the glass doors. Out, now. Before I call the police and tell them a confused woman dirty in off the street. Olivia didn't move. Soft eyes, portfolio pressed to her chest. What Diane didn't know, what nobody in that lobby knew, was exactly who was standing on the other side of that desk. And by the end of this day, every person in this building would never forget her name. To understand why what happened in that lobby mattered so much, you need to understand who Olivia Monroe actually was. Not who Diane assumed she was, who she actually was. Tuesday, 6:14 a.m., Chicago's South Side. The city was still gray at that hour, streetlights still on, the L train rattling somewhere in the distance, steel on steel, that familiar Chicago sound that never quite leaves you, even after you've made it out. Olivia was already at her desk. Black coffee, no sugar. A yellow legal pad covered in her handwriting. Tight, precise, every line straight even without ruled paper. Her COO, Nathan Briggs, always joked that her handwriting looked like it had been to law school. She never laughed at that joke. Not because it wasn't funny, because she had actually been to law school and business school, and had spent the first 3 years after graduation getting passed over for promotions by men who'd graduated below her. That was a long time ago. On the wall behind her desk hung a single framed photograph. Not a diploma, not an award. A photograph of a black man in a hard hat, standing on a half-finished bridge somewhere in rural Illinois, pointing up at a steel beam like he was introducing it to the sky. Her father. Raymond Monroe had spent 31 years as a structural engineer for the state. Never made more than $74,000 a year. Built bridges that thousands of people drove across every single day without ever knowing his name. He died of a heart attack at 67, 2 years before Olivia landed her first major contract. She thought about him every single morning. Meridian Edge Consulting had started in the second bedroom of a 2-bedroom apartment in Bronzeville. No investors, no family money, no safety net of any kind. Just Olivia, a laptop, a printer that jammed every third page, and a reputation she was building from scratch, one phone call at a time. That was 11 years ago. Today, Meridian Edge had 34 full-time employees, offices in Chicago, Atlanta, and Houston. A client list that included 3 Fortune 500 companies whose infrastructure strategies had been quietly, fundamentally reshaped by Olivia's work, even if her name rarely appeared in the press releases. She preferred it that way. She let the work speak. The work had been speaking loudly lately. At 7:30 a.m., Nathan called. Final numbers look clean, he said. Legal signed off last night, both copies ready. I know. She was already checking them, reading every line the way her father used to check load calculations. Slowly, twice, looking for the thing everyone else assumed was fine. Are you nervous? Nathan asked. No. Liar. She almost smiled. I'll be there at 9:45. Carol's team confirmed it twice yesterday. You're pre-cleared. VIP notation on the visitor log. Direct elevator access. It's already done. Good. She hung up. Looked at the photograph on the wall for a moment. Then she closed the legal pad, capped her pen, and stood up. The suit was deliberate. Charcoal gray, single button, structured shoulders. No jewelry except small gold earrings and her father's watch. An old Seiko with a cracked crystal she'd never had fixed. She liked the crack. It reminded her that things could be damaged and still keep perfect time. She looked at herself in the mirror for exactly 3 seconds. Not out of vanity, out of habit, a final check the way a pilot checks instruments before takeoff. Then she picked up her leather portfolio, both signed copies of the contract inside, along with her business license, her firm's state registration, and 3 emails from Apex's finance department confirming the $50,000 retainer already wired to Meridian Edge's account. She carried those documents everywhere now, not because she was paranoid, because she had learned, slowly, painfully, across 11 years of walking into rooms that weren't built for her, that preparation wasn't just good business practice. It was armor. Michigan Avenue at 9:38 a.m. was all glass and cold light. The Apex Consolidated Tower caught the morning sun and threw it back in every direction. 40 stories of steel and ambition, the kind of building that announced itself before you were anywhere near it. Olivia crossed the street, leather portfolio under her arm, and pushed through the revolving door. The lobby smelled like money and cold air. She walked straight to the reception desk. And that's when everything started. Diane Hartwell had been sitting behind that reception desk for 11 years. She knew this lobby the way a landlord knows a property. Every corner, every camera angle, every face that belonged and every face that didn't. She had a system. You could see it in the way her eyes moved. A half-second scan, top to bottom, like a machine running a checklist. Olivia got the scan the moment she walked through the revolving door. 2 white men in suits pushed through right behind her. Diane didn't even glance at them, just lifted 2 fingers from her keyboard, a small, practiced wave, and they walked straight through to the elevators without breaking stride. Olivia watched that, filed it away, said nothing. She approached the desk, set her portfolio down on the marble surface with a quiet, deliberate click, and smiled. "Good morning. Olivia Monroe, Meridian Edge Consulting. I have a 10 o'clock with Carol Whitfield on 22. Diane looked at her screen, typed something. The clicking of her keyboard was slow, almost theatrical. The kind of slow that isn't about accuracy, it's about making someone wait. "I'm not seeing anything under that name." "It should be there. My office confirmed the appointment 3 days ago. There's also a pre-clearance notation. VIP access, direct elevator, more typing." Diane tilted her head slightly, the way people do when they've already decided the answer and are just performing the search for appearances. "Nope, nothing." Olivia kept her voice even. "Can you spell it back for me?" "Monroe. First name, Olivia." Diane typed again, paused. "I'm showing Monroe, but it says the meeting was..." She squinted at the screen. "Rescheduled." "It wasn't rescheduled. I spoke with Carol's assistant yesterday afternoon at 4:30. "Well, the system says what the system says." Diane leaned back slightly in her chair, folding her hands on the desk with the calm of someone who had all the power in this particular exchange and knew it. "Maybe there was a miscommunication on your end. It happens." "On your end. Not on our end. On yours." Olivia opened her portfolio, slid a document across the desk. The meeting confirmation email, printed, time-stamped 4:47 p.m. the previous day, bearing the Apex Consolidated letterhead and the name of Carol Whitfield's personal assistant. Diane glanced at it, did not pick it up. "I can't verify third-party emails. You'd need an internal confirmation from our system." That email came from an Apex email address. "Ma'am," Diane's voice dropped half a register. Not quieter, harder. "I don't make the rules. If you're not in the system, I can't let you through. What I can do is suggest you wait outside while I reach out to the relevant department." "There's a waiting area right there." Olivia nodded toward the row of chairs along the lobby wall, currently occupied by 3 other visitors. All white, all sitting comfortably with their phones and their coffee cups, nobody having asked them a single question. Diane followed Olivia's gaze, looked back, didn't blink. Those individuals have been verified. You haven't. So I'm asking you to wait outside, on the sidewalk, until this gets sorted. The lobby hummed around them. Elevator chimes, dress shoes on marble, the distant murmur of a phone call somewhere near the security station. Normal Tuesday morning sounds, completely indifferent to what was happening at this desk. Olivia didn't move. I'm going to stay here, thank you. Something shifted in Diane's face. Not anger exactly, more like the particular irritation of someone whose authority has been questioned in a way they're not accustomed to. She picked up her desk phone, pressed a button, waited. Gregory, it's Diane at front reception. I need you down here. A pause. Yes, now, please. She set the phone down and turned back to her screen, typing again, as if Olivia had already ceased to exist. Olivia stood at the desk, both hands resting on the marble, portfolio open in front of her. She didn't check her phone, didn't shift her weight. Didn't give Diane the satisfaction of watching her fidget. 3 minutes passed. Gregory Saunders arrived from a side corridor, a compact man in his mid-50s, the kind of corporate middle manager who had built an entire identity around his access badge and his right to say no to people. He was already wearing his resolution face before he'd taken 3 steps into the lobby. Chin forward, shoulders squared, the walk of a man arriving to handle something. He looked at Diane, then at Olivia, did not look at the portfolio on the desk, did not look at the documents, did not ask Olivia's name. What's the issue here? Diane spoke first. This woman is claiming she has an appointment on 22, but she's not in the system and she's refusing to wait outside as requested. Gregory turned to Olivia. Ma'am, if you're not in our visitor system, I can't authorize lobby access. That's building policy. My name is Olivia Monroe. I'm the CEO of Meridian Edge Consulting. I have a signed contract with Apex Consolidated in this portfolio, a meeting confirmation from Carol Whitfield's office, and a pre-clearance notation that should be visible on your visitor log under VIP access. Gregory nodded slowly, the nod of a man who has stopped listening. I understand, but without system verification, my hands are tied. What I'd suggest is, have you checked the visitor log? A small pause. Diane handles visitor management. Has Diane checked the visitor log? Not the appointment calendar, the pre-clearance log. Gregory looked at Diane. Diane looked at her screen. A flicker of something. Not quite guilt. More like the micro-expression of someone realizing they may have skipped a step, but absolutely not planning to admit it. The system shows no confirmed appointment, Diane said, not looking up. Olivia reached into her portfolio again. This time she didn't slide the document across. She placed it flat on the desk, directly in Gregory's line of sight. It was the contract. The full master service agreement between Apex Consolidated Group and Meridian Edge Consulting. 43 pages. Both party signatures on the cover page. The Apex corporate seal embossed at the top. Gregory looked at it, looked up at Olivia, looked back at it. That doesn't verify your identity, ma'am. The words landed in the lobby like something dropped from a height. A man nearby, white, mid-30s, a visitor badge clipped to his jacket, had slowed his walk toward the elevator. Not stopped, just slowed. The way people do when something in the air tells them to pay attention. Olivia's voice stayed level. What identification would you like to see? We need internal system verification, not documents you've brought with you. You're telling me that a signed contract between your company and mine, bearing your CEO's signature, doesn't constitute sufficient identification? I'm telling you that I cannot override building security protocol based on personal documents. Gregory straightened slightly. Now, I've been very patient here, but I need you to either wait outside or I'm going to have to call security. Call them. Gregory blinked. That wasn't the response he was expecting. People usually back down at the word security. They shifted, apologized, gathered their things. Olivia just looked at him. Call them, she said again. Quiet, steady, like she was inviting him to make the worst decision of his professional life and was genuinely willing to wait while he made it. Gregory called security. 2 guards arrived within 90 seconds. Young, uniformed, professional. They assessed the situation with the careful neutrality of people who understood that something about this scene was not entirely what they'd been told to expect. And that's when Gregory made the move that would cost him everything. He leaned slightly toward Olivia, close enough that it felt deliberate, not accidental, and lowered his voice, not low enough. Look, I don't know where you got those papers, but we've had situations before. People trying to gain access under false pretenses. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm doing my job. False pretenses. The man with the visitor badge had fully stopped walking now. A young woman near the elevator bank, natural hair, laptop bag, early 20s, had taken her phone out of her pocket and was holding it at her side, screen facing up. Olivia looked at Gregory for a long moment. Then she reached into her portfolio one more time, slowly, deliberately. She placed 3 more documents on the desk, one at a time. Her Illinois CEO certification, Meridian Edge's state business registration, and a bank wire confirmation. Apex Consolidated's finance department, 3 weeks prior, $50,000 transferred to Meridian Edge Consulting as a signed good faith retainer. She tapped the wire confirmation once with one finger. False pretenses, she said. Not a question, not an accusation, just the words, returned to the man who'd used them, laid on the desk next to $50,000 worth of proof. The young woman near the elevator pressed the record. Gregory stared at the wire confirmation for 3 full seconds. You could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. The moment where a smarter man would have stopped, picked up the phone, called the 22nd floor, and tried to salvage the situation with a handshake and an apology. The off-ramp was right there, wide open. He didn't take it. These could be fabricated. He said it quietly, almost to himself, like he was thinking out loud, but everyone within 10 feet heard it. Anyone can print a document. Olivia didn't react. Not a flinch, not a sharp breath, nothing. Just those steady eyes on his face. Are you telling me, she said, that you believe a wire transfer confirmation from your own company's finance department, bearing your CFO's digital signature and your corporate account number, is fabricated? I'm saying I can't verify it on the spot. Then call your finance department. That's not how this works. Then call Carol Whitfield directly. Her number is on the contract cover page. Gregory's jaw tightened. Ma'am, I don't take instructions from visitors. That word again, visitors. Like she was someone who had wandered in off the street to look at the lobby art. Like the contract and the certification and the wire transfer sitting on his desk didn't exist at all. The 2 security guards were still standing there. One of them, older, maybe late 40s, a man who had clearly seen enough corporate situations to know when something was wrong, shifted his weight slightly and glanced at the documents on the desk. His eyes moved across the wire confirmation. Something in his expression changed. Subtle, but there. Gregory didn't notice. He was already turning to the guards. Please escort her to the exit. The older guard didn't move immediately. Sir, did you want to make a call upstairs first? I said to escort her out. A beat of silence. Then the guard stepped forward. Not aggressively, hands open, professional, but they stepped forward, toward Olivia. And the lobby, which had been pretending very hard not to watch, stopped pretending. Heads turned. A woman on a phone call let her voice trail off mid-sentence. The man with the visitor badge took 2 steps closer, not away. The young woman near the elevator, phone still in hand, held low, angled carefully, hadn't moved a single inch. Olivia raised one hand, open palm, calm. "Don't touch me, please." The guard stopped. She turned back to Gregory. Her voice was exactly the same volume it had been since she walked through the revolving door. Not louder, not harder, just precise. "I want to be very clear about what is happening right now. I arrived at 9:46 a.m. for a scheduled appointment. My name is on your visitor pre-clearance log under VIP access. I have presented a signed contract, a meeting confirmation from your senior VP's office, my state CEO certification, my firm's business registration, and a wire transfer from your own finance department. You have not checked the pre-clearance log. You have not called the 22nd floor. You have not asked for my identification in any standard format. What you have done is call security and use the phrase false pretenses about a black woman standing in your lobby with more documentation than most people bring to a closing." The lobby was very quiet now. Gregory's face had gone a particular shade of red that had nothing to do with temperature. "You're creating a disruption," he said. "I'm standing still. You're agitating the situation." "Gregory," the older security guard said it under his breath. Just his name, nothing else. But the way he said it meant something. Gregory ignored him. He pulled out his own phone now, typing rapidly, calling Walt, the head of building security, his next escalation up the chain. Doubling down instead of stepping back, the way people do when they've made a bad decision and don't know how to stop making it worse. Diane had gone very still at her desk. She was staring at her computer screen with the focused intensity of someone who desperately wished they were somewhere else entirely. Walt arrived 4 minutes later. Broad, gray-haired, the kind of man who had spent 20 years in building security and had developed a finely tuned instinct for situations that were about to become very expensive for someone. He walked in from the side corridor, took one look at the scene, the documents spread on the reception desk, the 2 guards standing awkwardly, the lobby full of people who had stopped even pretending to mind their own business, and his entire face did something complicated. He walked to the desk, looked at the documents, picked up the wire confirmation, read it properly, set it down, turned to Gregory, quietly. "Did you call upstairs before you called me?" Gregory straightened. "Diane handled the initial verification." Walt turned to Diane. "Did you call the 22nd floor?" A pause that lasted exactly 1 second too long. "I sent an email." Walt looked at her. "You sent an email?" "To the general inquiries." "To the general inquiries inbox." Walt set the wire confirmation down on the desk very carefully. The way you set something down when what you actually want to do is throw it. "For a VIP pre-cleared appointment." Diane's mouth opened, closed. Walt turned back to Gregory and said nothing. He didn't need to. His expression said it all. Gregory, who had now understood that the ground beneath him had shifted significantly, tried the only move he had left. He turned to Olivia with a new expression. Softer, managed. The corporate apology face that isn't really an apology at all. "Ms. Monroe, Look, if there's been a miscommunication here, I want to..." There wasn't a miscommunication. Her voice was still level, still quiet. You made a series of choices. Each one of them was a choice. But Gregory wasn't finished making bad ones. He stepped slightly closer to Olivia. Not enough to be called threatening, just enough to be deliberate, and dropped his voice in a way that was clearly meant to feel like a private conversation while the entire lobby listened. Look, I've been doing this job for 14 years. I know how to read a situation. And the situation I'm reading right now, he glanced at the documents, then back at her face, is someone who walked in here with a very compelling story and a lot of very convenient paperwork. He paused. We've had people try this before. Access fraud. It's more common than you think. Access fraud. The older security guard closed his eyes briefly. The man with the visitor badge made a sound. Not quite a word, more like the involuntary noise a person makes when they witness something genuinely difficult to believe. Olivia looked at Gregory for a long moment. The kind of look that doesn't need words, because the words would only diminish it. Then she reached into her portfolio one final time and laid the last document on the desk. Slowly, the way you play a card you've been holding for a very long time. It was a printed email chain, 14 messages, 6 weeks of pre-contract negotiations between Meridian Edge and Apex Consolidated, including 2 emails from Gregory Saunders himself, carbon copied on meeting logistics, his name in the sender field, his corporate signature at the bottom of every reply. She placed it directly in front of him. You were CC'd on 6 of these, she said. Gregory looked at the email chain. The color drained from his face so completely and so quickly that it was almost cinematic. His own name, his own words, his own signature. Staring back at him from a document he had apparently forgotten existed. The lobby held a silence that felt almost physical, the kind that presses against your ears and makes you aware of every small sound. The hum of the HVAC, the distant ping of an elevator, someone's shoe squeaking faintly against the marble somewhere near the entrance. Walt picked up the email chain, read the first 2 lines, set it down. Gregory, he said very quietly, stop talking. Gregory stopped talking. Diane had pushed her chair back slightly from the desk, as if creating a few extra inches of distance between herself and the reception counter would somehow separate her from what was unfolding on top of it. It wouldn't. Olivia's phone rang. The sound cut through the lobby like a stone through glass. She looked at the screen. Then she looked at Gregory. Then she answered it and put it on speaker, right there at the reception desk, in front of the guards, in front of Walt, in front of every single person who had stopped walking and was now openly, unabashedly watching. Olivia, clear and crisp, Carol Whitfield, Senior VP, Apex Consolidated. It's Carol. We're all set up here on 22. Are you downstairs? Every person in that lobby heard it. Yes, Olivia said. I've been downstairs for about 14 minutes. Your receptionist and your office manager have been attempting to remove me from the building. Dead silence on the line. Then, I'm sorry, what? Gregory had gone the color of old concrete. I'm coming down right now, Carol said. Her voice had changed completely. Underneath the control was something cold and final. The tone of a senior executive who has understood the full dimensions of a disaster and is already 3 steps into managing it. Gregory, do not say another word to this woman. The line stayed open. The elevator numbers above the far bank began to count downward. 22, 21, 20. Olivia stood at the desk, still, composed. Every document exactly where she'd placed it. 19, 18, 17. Gregory was staring at the floor. Diane was staring at her screen. Walt was staring at Gregory, and the young woman near the elevator adjusted her camera angle one more time, making sure she had a clean shot of the reception desk, the documents, and the two people who were about to have the worst afternoon of their professional lives. 12, 11, 10. The lobby held its breath. The elevator opened. Carol Whitfield stepped out and the lobby shifted. The way a room shifts when someone with real authority walks into it. Not loud, not dramatic, just a change in atmospheric pressure that everyone felt simultaneously. She was 53, sharp-featured, silver hair cut close. 22 years at Apex Consolidated. The kind of woman who had survived 4 CEOs, 2 recessions, and 1 hostile takeover attempt, and had come out of each one with more power than she'd had going in. She wore no expression at all as she crossed the lobby, which was somehow more alarming than if she'd looked furious. Her eyes went to Olivia first, then to the documents spread across the reception desk, then to Gregory, then to Diane, then back to Gregory. 3 seconds, total. Olivia, her voice was warm and completely controlled at the same time. I am so deeply sorry. Please. She gestured toward the elevator. Come up. Olivia collected her documents, slowly. Every single one, back into the portfolio, in order, the way she'd placed them. Methodically, without rushing, without performing relief. She closed the portfolio with a quiet snap. Then she paused at Gregory. She didn't say anything. She just looked at him, a long, level look that lasted maybe 4 seconds. The look of a woman who has been keeping records for 3 years and has just watched every entry in those records become relevant on the same morning. Gregory didn't meet her eyes. Olivia walked to the elevator. Carol stepped in beside her. The doors closed. The lobby exhaled. 22nd floor, floor-to-ceiling windows. Chicago spread out below them, silver and enormous in the late morning light. A conference room with a long table, 2 water glasses already poured, a pen laid out at each seat with the quiet precision of people who take signings seriously. Nathan Briggs was already there, standing near the window with his phone in his hand and an expression that Olivia recognized immediately. The specific look he got when something had happened that he was deciding how to tell her about. He showed her the phone before she'd even set her portfolio down. 47 seconds of video, shot from the elevator bank. Clear, steady, well-framed. The reception desk visible, the documents on the marble surface. Gregory leaning in with his lowered voice. The security guards flanking Olivia. And through it all, Olivia standing absolutely still with her hands visible and her portfolio pressed to her chest. The account that posted it had 12 followers. The video had 180,000 views. It had been posted 21 minutes ago. Carol watched it over Olivia's shoulder. Her jaw tightened once. Then she turned to her legal team and said, very quietly, "Get Gerald on the phone." But here's what the video didn't show. What nobody in that lobby knew yet. What made this morning not an isolated incident, but the visible surface of something that had been building for 3 years. Olivia opened her portfolio and removed a document that wasn't the contract. It was a personal log, printed, 12 pages, single-spaced. She set it on the table in front of Carol. "This is the 4th time," Olivia said. Carol looked up from the log. The first was March, 3 years ago, a building in Dallas. I was there for a preliminary meeting with the State Infrastructure Board. The security manager told me the meeting had been canceled and asked me to leave. I had the confirmation email. He said it could be altered. I left. The meeting had not been canceled. She turned a page. The second was 14 months later, Houston, a different company. A receptionist told me the freight elevator was the correct entrance for, and I'm quoting directly, contractors and service vendors. I was there to present a $400 million proposal. Carol was very still. The third was 8 months ago. A building on Wacker Drive, 6 blocks from here. A lobby manager told me the conference room I'd been booked into had been double scheduled and offered me a storage room with a folding table as an alternative. He did not offer the same alternative to the 2 white men who arrived for the same meeting 10 minutes after I did. She turned to the last page of the log. Each time I documented it. The names, the times, the exact words used, the witnesses present. I consulted an attorney after the third incident. He told me that individually, each situation could be explained away, that I would need a pattern that was impossible to dismiss. She closed the log. I kept waiting. The room was completely silent. Nathan was looking at his shoes. Carol picked up the log and held it the way you hold something that has just fundamentally changed the shape of a situation. "How long have you been keeping this?" she asked. "Since the first time it happened." Olivia paused. "I kept it because I knew that one day I would be standing in exactly this kind of room, and I would need it to be real, documented, undeniable." She looked at Carol steadily. "Today is that day." Carol set the log down, picked up her phone, made 2 calls. One to Gerald in legal, one to Apex's CEO directly. Both conversations were short. Both ended with the same words from Carol's end. "Clear my afternoon." Outside the window, 40 stories below, Michigan Avenue moved through its Tuesday morning completely unaware. And somewhere in the lobby downstairs, Gregory Saunders' phone was ringing with a number he didn't recognize. It was Human Resources. Gregory answered on the 3rd ring. He was still in the lobby when it happened. Standing near the reception desk, Walt beside him, both of them in the particular silence of men who have run out of things to say to each other. The lobby had mostly returned to its normal rhythm, badges scanning, elevators opening and closing, but the normalcy felt thin now, like a coat of paint over something that kept showing through. His phone buzzed. Internal extension, HR, 4th floor. He picked up. 50 seconds later, he hung up and stood very still with the phone at his side. "I have to go upstairs," he said to Walt. Walt nodded once, said nothing. Diane got her call 4 minutes later. She took it at her desk with her hand cupped around the receiver as if privacy were still possible. It wasn't. She listened, nodded twice, set the phone down and stared at her screen for a long moment before slowly pushing her chair back and standing up. She reached under the desk for her bag. Her hands were shaking. Not dramatically, just the small, fine tremor of someone whose body has understood something before their mind has caught up. HR pulled them separately. 2 different rooms. Standard protocol. Keep the accounts isolated before the facts are established. Gregory went first. The HR director placed a printed copy of the visitor pre-clearance log on the table between them. One line highlighted in yellow. Olivia Monroe. VIP, CEO level, direct elevator access. Entered 3 days prior. "Were you aware of this notation when you called security?" Gregory said he had relied on Diane's assessment. She asked why he hadn't verified it himself before escalating. He said that wasn't his standard procedure. She asked whether his standard procedure included using the phrase false pretenses toward a visitor who had presented 5 separate forms of documentation. He said he was protecting the building. She set her pen down. "Gregory, the video has won 4 million views. It's been shared by 3 national news accounts in the last 40 minutes. Ms. Monroe's attorney has already contacted our legal department, and you were CC'd on 6 emails in the pre-negotiation chain, meaning you had direct prior knowledge of exactly who she was." She paused. "So, Is there anything you want to tell me that you haven't told me yet? Gregory looked at the highlighted line. He had nothing that helped him. Diane's interview was worse. The email she had sent upstairs was pulled within minutes. It had gone to a general inquiries inbox, the digital equivalent of a suggestion box. Not to Carol's office, not to anyone with authority to flag a VIP appointment. Ellen showed her the sent email, then the pre-clearance log, then a third document, an acknowledgement form signed by Diane 8 months prior, confirming she had completed Apex's mandatory training on equitable access protocols and discriminatory denial of entry. Diane looked at her own signature for a long time. "I didn't think," she started. "That's the issue," Ellen said, not unkindly, just accurately. By 2:15 p.m., both Gregory and Diane had been placed on immediate administrative leave. Their access badges were deactivated at 2:22 p.m., a timestamp that would later appear in multiple news articles as a small but precise detail people found oddly satisfying. At 2:30 p.m., Apex's CEO sent an internal memo, 3 paragraphs. It acknowledged a serious failure of both protocol and basic human dignity. Carefully worded, legally reviewed. An employee photographed it and posted it by 3 p.m. The video crossed 1.2 million views before 6 p.m. The comments had stopped being surprised and started being angry, which is a different thing entirely. Surprise fades. Anger organizes. And across town, in a West Loop office, a reporter named Stacy Drummond was already on the phone with her producer, saying the 4 words that meant this story was about to get significantly larger. "I know who she is." Stacy Drummond's segment aired at 6:42 p.m. on the National Evening News. She had done her homework fast. 4 hours of calls, records pulls, and source confirmations compressed into a segment that ran 4 minutes and 17 seconds, long by evening news standards. Which meant her producer had understood immediately that this wasn't a one-day story. The framing was precise and deliberate. No sensationalism, just facts, laid end to end, each one heavier than the last. A Black woman, CEO and founder of Meridian Edge Consulting, a firm with $340 million in active contracts and offices in 3 cities, arrived at a scheduled appointment carrying a signed $2.3 billion contract, was told to wait on the sidewalk, was accused of false pretenses, was flanked by security guards, stood completely still for 14 minutes while a lobby full of people watched, had the contract in her hand the entire time. The video played twice during the segment, once at the beginning, once at the end, slowed slightly, so viewers could watch Gregory lean in with his lowered voice and watch Olivia's expression. Unchanged, steady, absorbing it, and understand exactly what they were looking at. Stacy closed the segment with one sentence delivered directly to camera. Ms. Monroe has not yet made a public statement. Her attorney has. Attorney Warren Cole held a press conference the following morning on the steps of a federal building on Dearborn Street. He was measured, precise, and thorough in the way that people are when they have been preparing for a moment for considerably longer than the public realizes. He filed a civil complaint against Apex Consolidated Group, Gregory Saunders, and Diane Hartwell. The complaint was 41 pages. It outlined not one incident, but 4. Every entry in Olivia's 12-page log, now formatted into legal language, with supporting documentation attached as exhibits. He read a single paragraph aloud at the podium. The paragraph described the Dallas incident, the confirmation email, the security manager who said it could be altered, the meeting that had not been canceled, Olivia leaving anyway, alone, in a parking garage, calling Nathan from her car to say she'd been turned away again. A woman in the press pool put her hand over her mouth. Warren Cole set the paper down. "My client kept records for 3 years," he said. "She did not do this because she was planning to sue anyone. She did it because she understood that without documentation, her experience would be explained away every single time. She was right, and today, that documentation speaks for itself." The filing was public record by 10 a.m. By noon, it had been downloaded 34,000 times. The Illinois Civil Rights Commission opened a parallel investigation 2 days later, not just into Gregory and Diane, into Apex Consolidated's institutional practices, visitor access protocols, complaint history, staff training records. The investigation subpoenaed 5 years of lobby incident reports and discovered, buried in a 2021 internal review, a notation that the Michigan Avenue building had received 3 prior informal complaints about inconsistent visitor treatment. None had been formally investigated. All 3 complainants had been people of color. The notation had been filed and forgotten. It was no longer forgotten. 2 other Apex employees came forward within the week, both black, both non-executive level. A facilities coordinator named Brenda and a junior analyst named James, who had separately experienced lobby misdirection, freight elevator suggestions, and extended verification delays that their white colleagues had never encountered. Neither had reported formally. Both said the same thing when asked why. "I didn't think anyone would believe me." They believe them now. Their accounts were added to the Commission's investigation file, expanding the scope from a single incident to a documented pattern spanning at least 4 years inside one building alone. Depositions began 6 weeks after the filing. Gregory's was 3 hours long. When asked whether he had reviewed the visitor pre-clearance log before calling security, he said he had relied on Diane's assessment. When asked why he had accepted Diane's assessment without independent verification for a VIP-level appointment, he said it was standard practice. When asked whether standard practice had ever been applied in the same way to a white visitor, he said he couldn't speak to hypotheticals. Warren Cole placed the email chain on the table, Gregory's name in the CC field. 6 emails, his corporate signature at the bottom of each one. "Is this hypothetical?" Cole asked. Gregory's attorney requested a 5-minute recess. Diane's deposition was shorter, but more damaging in a different way. The acknowledgement form, her signature 8 months prior, confirming completion of equitable access training, entered the record. When asked what she remembered from that training, she said she remembered it being mostly about parking validation procedures. The training had been 45 minutes long. Parking validation had been covered in the final 3 minutes. The rest had been about exactly this. Apex Consolidated settled before the case reached trial. The terms were sealed by court order, but Stacey Drummond reported, citing 2 sources with direct knowledge, that the financial component was an 8-figure number. The non-financial terms were public. A mandatory third-party audit of all 14 Apex facilities. A funded bias training program, externally administered, non-optional for all building management staff. A formal public letter of apology from Apex's CEO. Not a press statement, not a communications team product, but a letter, signed, published in full. The letter ran 4 paragraphs. The 3rd paragraph said, "What Ms. Monroe experienced in our building was not a miscommunication. It was a failure of institutional culture, and that failure belongs to us." Judge Patricia Lawson, overseeing the related regulatory proceeding, issued a formal finding that would be cited in 2 subsequent discrimination cases in other jurisdictions. Her language was careful and final. The pattern of conduct described here constitutes a systemic failure, not an isolated incident. The documentation preserved by the plaintiff over 3 years represents exactly the kind of evidence that systemic failures are designed, whether consciously or not, to prevent from existing. That it exists at all is a testament to extraordinary persistence in the face of repeated institutional dismissal. Systemic failures require systemic remedies. This court will ensure they are applied. Gregory Saunders did not return from administrative leave. His employment was terminated 31 days after the incident. He filed a wrongful termination claim against Apex. It was dismissed. Diane Hartwell was terminated the same week. The administrative proceeding related to her signed training acknowledgement resulted in a formal finding of discriminatory conduct, the first such finding under Apex's internal review process in 11 years of its existence. The second finding came 14 months later. Different building, different city. But that is a different story. 6 months after that Tuesday morning in the lobby, Meridian Edge Consulting signed 2 new Fortune 100 contracts. The firm's national profile had tripled, not because of the lawsuit, not because of the video, but because the work had always been exceptional. And now the world had been given a reason to look at it. A major business magazine ran Olivia on their cover in January. Same charcoal blazer, same gold earrings, her father's cracked Seiko on her wrist, visible in the photograph if you looked closely enough. The headline read, "The CEO Who Kept Receipts." She didn't choose the headline, but she didn't object to it either. The $2.3 billion Apex contract proceeded exactly as planned. The infrastructure redevelopment work began on schedule. Meridian Edge delivered the first phase report 6 days ahead of deadline. Nobody in the press covered that part. The quiet, unglamorous, extraordinary competence that had been there the whole time, before the video, before the filing, before any of it. It had always been there. Nathan framed the cover of the magazine and hung it in the Meridian Edge reception area, next to the photograph of Raymond Monroe pointing at his bridge. Olivia told him it was excessive. He left it up anyway. The young woman who filmed the video was never publicly identified. She never came forward, never gave an interview, never posted again from the account she'd used that morning, which had 12 followers when she pressed record and was deactivated 3 days later. Olivia mentioned her once, in her single public statement, standing at a podium 2 weeks after the settlement. "I want to thank the person who filmed that video. I don't know your name, but you saw something happening and you didn't look away. That matters more than I can say." She stepped back from the podium. That was all she said about it. Some things don't need more words than that. Apex Consolidated completed the mandatory third-party audit across all 14 facilities. The audit report was 200 pages. It was not comfortable reading. But Apex implemented every recommended change, publicly, verifiably, on a documented timeline. It was, as one legal commentator noted, a rare case of an institution choosing genuine accountability over simply waiting for the news cycle to move on. It didn't fix everything. It wasn't meant to. But it fixed something real. And something documented and verified is always better than something promised and forgotten. Brenda and James, the 2 Apex employees who came forward, both received formal written acknowledgments from the company that their prior experiences had been real, had been wrong, had not been their fault. It was a small thing. It was not a small thing at all. Olivia gave one interview 8 months after the settlement, a podcast, 40 minutes. Near the end, the host asked her what she thought about every morning when she looked at the photograph of her father. She was quiet for a moment. "He built things that lasted," she said. "Bridges people use every day without knowing his name. He never needed the credit. He just needed the work to stand." A pause. I think about that a lot. Build things that stand. Keep records. Don't let anyone tell you the room wasn't built for you. Her voice was steady and unhurried, the voice of a woman who had stopped needing anyone's permission a long time ago. Sometimes you have to be the one who builds the room. The host didn't say anything for a moment. Neither did the audience. Some answers land that way, not with noise, but with the particular quiet of something that is simply, undeniably true. So here is the question I want to leave you with today. If you had been standing in that lobby, not as Olivia, not as Gregory, not as Diane, but as one of the people walking past, badge around your neck, coffee in your hand, pretending not to see what was happening right in front of you, what would you have done? One person pressed a record. That was enough to change everything. Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. If this story made you feel something real, share it. Because the more people understand how this works, the harder it becomes to pretend it doesn't. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.